Top 1. The Tutankhamun Death Sequence. In November 1922, deep within Egypt's Valley of the Kings, British archaeologist Howard Carter made what would become the most iconic discovery in Egyptology, the nearly intact tomb of Pharaoh Tutankhamun. The moment the tomb was breached, Carter and his team had no idea that they had also unlocked something far more disturbing. Within weeks of the tomb's opening, Lord Carnarvon, the expedition's financier, died from a sudden mosquito bite infection. Newspapers around the world seized on the coincidence, calling it the first victim of a pharaoh's curse. But Carnarvon's death was not an isolated incident. In the years that followed, more than 20 people connected to the excavation either died unexpectedly or suffered debilitating mental or physical breakdowns. Something ancient had stirred, and it seemed determined to punish those who had disturbed it. The events that followed were chillingly precise. Sir Archibald Douglas Reed, the radiologist who conducted the first X-ray of Tutankhamun's mummy, died shortly afterward under mysterious circumstances. George J. Gould, an American railroad magnate who visited the tomb, contracted a fever and died days later. Arthur Mace, a leading member of Carter's team, collapsed and never recovered. By 1929, over 24 individuals linked to the tomb had either died or suffered from unexplainable health issues. None of these deaths shared an identifiable medical pattern. The victims came from different countries, backgrounds, and health statuses. What they had in common was a direct connection to Tutankhamun's burial chamber. The tomb itself contained inscriptions and objects unlike any previously discovered. The burial chamber was sealed with bitumen and lined with golden amulets designed to ward off intruders. Among the treasures were daggers made of meteoric iron, a ceremonial mask with chemical properties that resist degradation, and a scarab amulet inscribed with the warning, "Death shall come on swift wings to him who disturbs the king's peace." The temperature inside the tomb was unusually stable, and samples taken decades later showed traces of mold species that produce mycotoxins. Yet no such exposure could account for the variety or timeline of deaths. Instruments used to measure environmental radiation and magnetic resonance around the tomb recorded subtle but consistent anomalies. A low-frequency hum, just below the human hearing threshold, persisted even when the tomb was closed. British authorities initially dismissed the pattern as media sensationalism, but the Egyptian Antiquities Service reportedly requested that certain artifacts not be put on display due to unexplained effects on museum staff. Carter himself, although never publicly acknowledging any belief in a curse, became increasingly withdrawn and secretive in his final years. Many of his personal diaries from that period remain unpublished or mysteriously missing from the archives of the Griffith Institute at Oxford. Researchers who tried to re-examine the full list of excavation staff encountered redacted names and conflicting records. Whether by bureaucratic oversight or intentional omission, it became increasingly difficult to trace the full scope of the curse's victims. Today, the tomb of Tutankhamun is one of the most visited archaeological sites on Earth, yet the full account of its consequences remains fragmented. Several academic journals have attempted statistical studies of the death pattern, only to conclude that no consistent variable explains the anomalies. But the evidence, both anecdotal and physical, suggests something more complex than coincidence. If Tutankhamun's tomb was truly protected by ancient mechanisms, psychological triggers, or unknown biological agents, it would mark a turning point in our understanding of ancient engineering, neurobiology, or perhaps something even deeper. And if it wasn't any of those, then why did so many people die for touching stone and gold buried for 3,000 years? Top 2. The Black Sarcophagus of Alexandria. In July 2018, during a routine construction survey in the Sidi Ghaber district of Alexandria, Egypt, a team of local archaeologists unearthed a massive black granite sarcophagus buried 16 feet beneath a nondescript urban plot. Measuring over 8.5 feet long and weighing more than 27 tons, the coffin was untouched and unmarked, a rarity in a city often looted for its artifacts. The find immediately caught global attention, not only because of its size and pristine condition, but because of the ominous aura that seemed to surround it. Despite public calls to leave it sealed, the team opened the sarcophagus. What happened next would stain not just their memory, but their bodies. Upon breaking the seal, A foul, red-brown liquid spilled from the container, reeking of rot and iron. The stench was so overwhelming that several members of the crew vomited on site. Inside, the team found 3 decayed skeletons submerged in the strange fluid, with no identifying markings, no inscriptions, no artifacts, and no signs of status or identity. While initial analyses suggested the bodies belonged to soldiers, forensic anomalies quickly emerged. The bones exhibited unnatural erosion patterns and were stained black, while trace metals in the sarcophagus fluid included elevated levels of mercury and phosphorus. Local newspapers dubbed it the sarcophagus of death, and rumors spread that it contained a biological weapon or cursed material. Several individuals present at the opening reported physical symptoms within 48 hours: migraines, nausea, and unshakable fatigue. One technician claimed his vision blurred for days afterward, and a historian on site experienced acute vertigo lasting weeks. Egyptian officials downplayed the incident, stating the liquid was merely sewage that had leaked into the tomb over centuries. But toxicologists at Alexandria University, reviewing samples of the liquid, found compounds that had no consistent environmental origin, as if they had been synthesized in isolation. More strangely, the local museum that received the skeletal remains suffered a power outage 2 nights later, and its security system failed for over 6 hours. During this time, at least 2 artifacts disappeared, though no official report was filed. Attempts to digitally scan the sarcophagus for micro-inscriptions or etchings returned only signal distortion. 3 independent scanning teams reported electromagnetic interference concentrated on the inner lid of the coffin. When a portable magnetic resonance analyzer was brought in, it shut down completely upon contact with the granite surface. Even more bizarrely, an urban legend spread within the neighborhood that street animals had begun avoiding the dig site, and 2 nearby cell towers experienced signal drops at irregular intervals for 3 consecutive nights following the opening. After a brief press cycle, the story vanished. The Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities concluded its public update with the phrase, "All biological concerns have been addressed, and the area is safe." No further updates were issued. The sarcophagus was quietly transferred to a storage facility in Cairo. None of the original excavation team agreed to participate in further interviews, and several had reportedly requested reassignment. The incident, once poised to become a groundbreaking discovery, was left unresolved. If the black sarcophagus contained only decay and sewage, the lingering effects, both psychological and physical, remained difficult to explain. But if it held something more, something ancient and engineered to resist time, disturbance, or exposure, then the warnings from ancient tombs were not superstition. They were systems, and they were never meant to be opened. Top 3, the vanishing team in Mongolia. In the summer of 1997, a little-known archaeological expedition, funded by a joint Mongolian-Russian historical institute, ventured into the Khuvsgol province of northern Mongolia. The team's target was an undocumented mound formation near the edge of Lake Khuvsgol, a glacial lake located over 5,000 feet above sea level. Satellite imagery had identified geometric anomalies beneath the terrain, specifically 2 rectangular voids aligned along true north, suggesting artificial construction beneath what was assumed to be a natural hill. What began as a standard exploratory dig ended with the complete disappearance of the team. No bodies, no remains. Only their abandoned equipment strewn about the campsite as if time had suddenly stopped. The excavation was led by Dr. Alexei Borodin, a Siberian archaeologist known for his work on Scythian burial grounds. His team of 9 researchers and 2 local guides established base camp near the target mound on July 6th. By the 8th day, they had unearthed a series of interlocking stone slabs forming the upper portion of a presumed burial chamber. Communication logs with their support crew back in Ulaanbaatar reported irregular compass readings and a persistent hum at the excavation site that caused interference with radio equipment. The last message transmitted from Dr. Borodin's satellite phone read, "We are hearing something below. Will attempt to access chamber before sunrise." That was the final transmission. When the support team arrived 4 days later, the campsite was deserted. The tents remained upright, food was still sealed, and excavation tools were found scattered around the open trench. But there were no footprints, no drag marks, and no signs of struggle. 12 people had vanished without a trace. The only anomalies recorded were elevated magnetic readings on all digital compasses and radiation spikes localized to a 5-foot radius around the trench. The excavation logbooks were missing, and 2 digital cameras found in the camp had their memory cards erased. The Mongolian Ministry of Culture classified the incident as an environmental mishap and sealed the site. A temporary military post was erected around the area, restricting access under the guise of wildlife preservation. Russian authorities never commented publicly, and Borodin's name was quietly removed from university records and publications. Local herders reported military helicopters circling the area weeks later, with some claiming to see boxes airlifted from the trench wrapped in lead foil. The site remains inaccessible to this day. Over the years, unconfirmed documents surfaced on fringe websites claiming that one of the dig team's GoPro-style cameras was recovered and showed footage of a deep stone passage lit by bioluminescent carvings. Another account, later retracted, described a human figure standing motionless inside the tomb, its eyes reflecting light like a predator's. None of these claims were ever authenticated. However, in 2019, a French amateur satellite analyst released a time-lapse map showing that the mound's dimensions had shifted subtly between 1995 and 2005, suggesting either a subsidence event or something moving underground. If the Kovskol site was indeed a burial mound, then whatever lay beneath it had not rested peacefully. 12 lives disappeared in silence, leaving behind nothing but a trench and a question. Perhaps it was not a tomb waiting to be uncovered. Perhaps it was a lock, and someone unwittingly turned the key. Top 4. The Shifting Tomb of Peru. In May 2003, a Peruvian-led archaeological team began excavations near the edges of the Nazca Plateau, an area already renowned for its giant geoglyphs visible only from the air. But this time, the focus was not on the lines above ground, but rather a subterranean structure discovered beneath an isolated ridge, known locally as Cerro Blanco Muerto. Ground-penetrating radar had detected an unusual void, roughly 22 feet below the surface, rectangular in shape and disturbingly symmetrical. On the morning of May 17th, the team breached the outer layer of what they believed to be a stone-lined tomb. What happened next was recorded in their preliminary field reports, but those documents were later sealed. According to witnesses, the moment they entered the tomb, time itself appeared to fracture. 4 members of the core team, including expedition leader Dr. Clara Huaman, later gave sworn testimonies to the National Institute of Culture in Lima. Each described the interior of the tomb in entirely different terms. One claimed the chamber was filled with gold-lined walls and ancient bones arranged in star-like formations. Another reported complete darkness and a floor that reflected the sky. A third described standing in water, hearing whispers in Quechua, while the fourth said the walls were engraved with pulsating symbols that vanished when approached. These discrepancies were not due to faulty memory. They were all recorded within minutes of the event, and each team member insisted on their version with absolute certainty. Further investigation revealed that none of the equipment brought into the tomb functioned properly. The team's laser measurer recorded impossible dimensions. One wall measured 14 feet on approach, but 19 feet on retreat. Infrared imaging returned only black voids, while sound recorders picked up a low-pitched tone, modulating at regular 5-second intervals. When a technician tried to calibrate a magnetic compass inside the chamber, the needle spun continuously. Outside, the air remained still, but inside, several members described an unnatural pressure on their chest and a sensation of being watched. By the 3rd day, the entire team was evacuated after 2 researchers collapsed from severe disorientation. One of them, an assistant named Rodrigo Esquivel, began speaking in reverse syllables which could not be traced to any known language. He was later admitted to a psychiatric facility and never returned to fieldwork. His CAT scan reportedly showed increased neural activity in the pineal region of the brain, a phenomenon more commonly observed during near-death experiences. After the incident, the Peruvian government placed the site under military lockdown, citing geological instability and preservation of cultural heritage. Satellite images of the area were downgraded in resolution on public platforms. Academic journals that initially expressed interest in the findings withdrew their inquiries, citing lack of verifiable data. The tomb was reburied with layers of concrete and gravel. To date, no official explanation has been given. Years later, a leaked memo, allegedly from the Peruvian Ministry of Defense, referred to the tomb as an anomalous cognitive structure and warned that extended exposure could result in irreversible perception breakdown. If true, the tomb is not just a burial site, but a psychological weapon, or perhaps a construct meant to guard something by destabilizing the mind of any intruder. What kind of intelligence could build a chamber that fractures reality itself? Top 5. The Radiation Tomb in Siberia. In September 1987, a Soviet geological survey team operating in the remote Yamalo-Nenets region of northern Siberia detected abnormally high levels of ground radiation near a glacier-fed river bend known as Site K-29. Initially presumed to be remnants of Cold War weapons testing, the radiation signature was oddly confined to a stone mound, approximately 30 feet in diameter. When archaeologists were called in weeks later, they concluded it was a Bronze Age burial site, a kurgan, likely belonging to the Akhanev culture. Despite warnings from radiation specialists, a decision was made to open the mound. What they uncovered triggered a silent crisis within the Soviet scientific establishment. At a depth of roughly 6 feet, the team breached a stone-lined chamber housing a single object, a sarcophagus-shaped structure made of a metallic alloy not identified in Soviet material databases. The object was cold to the touch despite ambient ground temperatures above freezing and emitted low-level gamma radiation measurable up to 12 feet away. A geologist attempting to inspect the object directly collapsed moments after touching it and later died of acute organ failure. Within 2 weeks, 2 additional researchers involved in the excavation were hospitalized with symptoms resembling radiation poisoning, skin lesions, vomiting, and a sharp decline in white blood cell count. None had spent more than 10 minutes near the object. The sarcophagus was eventually airlifted in a sealed container to a research facility near Novosibirsk. Transportation records refer to it only as Object 87K. Internal memos from the Academy of Sciences, later leaked in the early 2000s, described failed attempts to penetrate the object using industrial drills and high-frequency lasers. Its surface absorbed all thermal input and emitted a constant hum at 17.4 Hz, a frequency often linked to visual hallucinations and unease in humans. None of the scans, including X-ray and ultrasound, revealed anything inside. More disturbing was the effect it had on nearby electronics. Lab instruments malfunctioned without cause, and hard drives wiped themselves during data transfers. In the months that followed, 3 more members of the analysis team fell ill under unexplained circumstances. One physicist went blind overnight. Another developed a brain tumor despite having no prior risk factors. The object was eventually sealed in a lead-lined vault beneath the facility and declared cognitively toxic. The entire project was classified by the Soviet Defense Ministry, and no official publications were ever released. When the USSR collapsed in 1991, information about Site K-29 was lost amid the chaos. However, in 2014, a declassified military satellite image showed construction work at the same coordinates, suggesting the site was being re-excavated or monitored. No new data has surfaced since. Locals in the area, primarily Nenets herders, continue to avoid the region, referring to it in whispered tones as the hill that burns without fire. If the object inside the Siberian tomb was built thousands of years ago, then it predates all known forms of metallurgy and nuclear science. If it was more recent, then someone buried it beneath the earth and surrounded it with stone as if it were meant to never be found. Either possibility leads to the same question. What was so dangerous that the earth itself was used to hide it? Top 6. The Armenian Signal Disruption. In October 2009, an interdisciplinary team of archaeologists and electrical engineers from Yerevan State University launched a survey of the Aragats mountain region in northern Armenia. Their goal was to document pre-Christian burial sites previously observed only in aerial photos taken during the Soviet era. One site in particular, located near the Kasag River Valley at an elevation of 6,200 feet, displayed a perfectly circular stone outline with an unusually symmetrical inner ring. Believed to be a Bronze Age tomb, the site was selected for immediate excavation. But from the first hour of digging, something began to interfere, not with the excavation itself, but with reality's infrastructure. All wireless equipment began to fail within 60 feet of the site. Walkie-talkies emitted constant static. GPS devices lost satellite locks. Drone cameras crashed or returned blank feeds. Initially dismissed as software glitches or solar interference, the team brought in shielded replacements only to find the same result. It wasn't until a ground technician attempted to live stream a basic survey video that the anomaly became undeniable. The feed was distorted with sudden pixelation, black frames, and fragments of audio containing reverse syllables and low growling frequencies. The same file played back on different computers produced entirely different corruptions. It was as if the data itself refused to be recorded. Inside the burial site, the central chamber consisted of a smooth, basalt-lined floor and a square stone sarcophagus bearing no carvings or inscriptions. Its lid was fractured at one corner, revealing a hollow cavity, yet the interior was shrouded in darkness beyond what any flashlight could pierce. When a digital probe was lowered inside, the feed terminated immediately, and the cable stiffened, refusing to be retracted until manually forced. Within minutes, the laptop connected to the probe overheated and shut down permanently. Attempts to analyze the feed revealed strange magnetic imprints encoded within the final frame, resembling primitive runes, though none matched known regional scripts. On the second day, anomalies escalated. Researchers began reporting intense headaches, sudden confusion, and ringing in the ears when standing near the structure. One assistant collapsed after saying he could hear singing inside the stone. Another began compulsively drawing concentric spirals without explanation. Seismometers placed nearby to monitor subterranean shifts began recording rhythmic pulses at perfect 5-minute intervals, a pattern never before observed in local geology. The Armenian government, alerted by the university's security division, dispatched a containment team from its Ministry of Emergency Situations. By the end of the week, the site was sealed and all equipment confiscated. The official explanation cited interference from underground mineral concentrations. However, leaked internal documents later suggested that the tomb's structure emitted a persistent electromagnetic field at frequencies capable of affecting memory, perception, and even hardware performance. The term used in those reports was informational contamination. Since then, the site has not appeared on any public archaeological registry, and satellite access to its coordinates returns outdated or blurred imagery. The team members involved were reassigned or left academia altogether. One, Dr. Lilit Manukian, was interviewed anonymously in 2016 and claimed that she experienced recurrent dreams of a voice encoded in light. She refused to elaborate further. If the Armenian tomb was designed to interfere with perception, memory, and electronic records, it suggests a level of intent far beyond burial ritual. Whether it served as a warning, a lock, or a system of defense is unknown. But whatever lay inside that basalt vault did more than resist discovery. It erased itself in real time. What kind of intelligence anticipates not just physical intrusion, but digital documentation? Top 7. The Celtic Stone Tomb. In the spring of 1984, a group of European archaeologists began surveying an overgrown forest in the remote Ardennes region of northeastern France, following the rediscovery of a Celtic-era burial site originally logged by Napoleonic cartographers, but lost for over a century. The site consisted of a raised earthen mound, over 15 feet high, and surrounded by concentric rings of ancient yew trees, known locally as le bois qui ne parle pas, the wood that does not speak. Beneath the mound, preliminary magnetometry scans revealed a subterranean chamber constructed from monolithic slabs of quartzite. The tomb appeared undisturbed, but by the end of the excavation, one of the team's most experienced members would be permanently institutionalized, and the site would be buried again, not for protection, but for fear. On May 3rd, Dr. Henrik Volz, a veteran archaeologist and linguist, entered the tomb alone to begin preliminary documentation. He was inside for approximately 20 minutes before colleagues found him wandering the forest half a mile away, barefoot, unresponsive, and unable to recall his own name. Volz had no visible injuries, no signs of trauma, and no history of mental illness. Yet multiple psychiatric evaluations over the following months concluded that his memory had been effectively erased. Not damaged, not suppressed, erased. He could speak multiple languages fluently, but could not recall the alphabet. He recognized architectural features, but not his own handwriting. MRI scans later showed unusual patterns of neural activity, specifically an abnormal reduction in hippocampal function that neurologists struggled to explain. Inside the tomb, what the team discovered was equally troubling. The walls were lined with high silica quartz slabs, polished to a mirror-like finish, each measuring over 6 feet long and weighing nearly 1.5 tons. Despite their age, they bore no signs of weathering. The interior was free from dust, mold, or insect life, as if it had been sealed in a vacuum. In the center of the chamber stood a carved stone plinth on which rested an obsidian tablet roughly the size of a human torso. Its surface shimmered with prismatic distortions, resisting focus under flashlight beams. When photographed, the image data consistently corrupted, producing either blank frames or cascading error codes. Soon, other members of the team began reporting symptoms: disorientation, nausea, and vivid waking dreams described as silent conversations with something unseen. A technician who attempted to sketch the carvings on the plinth produced only chaotic lines and, when questioned, could not remember sitting down to draw. Another researcher wrote a 7-page field report entirely in an unrecognizable script. Forensic linguists later determined that the characters bore resemblance to early Celtic Ogham, but were arranged in sequences that defied phonetic structure. On May 6th, the lead excavation coordinator received a direct order from the French Ministry of Culture: halt all activity and reseal the site. No explanation was given. Within a week, the mound was covered in reinforced concrete and officially designated as a protected heritage site, pending further analysis. As of 2024, it remains untouched, with no new excavations authorized. Academic journals briefly referenced the Ardennes memory loss incident, but withdrew mentions after follow-up inquiries were redirected or ignored. Dr. Volz was quietly retired from academic service, and his case is cited in internal psychiatric literature as a rare example of non-traumatic total retrograde amnesia. If a tomb can erase not just the lives of the dead but the minds of the living, then its purpose may not have been remembrance, but defense against memory, against transmission, against continuity itself. What kind of burial is designed to protect the world not from a corpse, but from an idea? Top 8. The Tomb of the Screaming Woman. In August 2011, during a salvage excavation near the ancient city of Mari in eastern Syria, a French-Syrian archaeological team uncovered a sealed limestone sarcophagus buried beneath the foundations of a partially collapsed ziggurat. The site had long been considered unstable due to flood erosion, but satellite imaging revealed a previously uncharted subterranean vault. The sarcophagus was unearthed with careful precision and transported to a temporary on-site analysis tent. What followed next was so unnerving that several team members resigned on the spot, and official documentation was never released to the public. The sarcophagus itself was modest in decoration, a 7-foot-long block of smooth limestone with no inscriptions or symbolic carvings. However, its lid was sealed with a form of bitumen, unlike any recorded in the region's material history, and the stone showed signs of artificial weathering despite being found in a protected environment. When the seal was broken and the lid lifted, every person present reported hearing an unmistakable sound: a woman screaming. The cry was not mechanical, not ambient, and not imagined. It had spatial depth and emotional intensity. It lasted approximately 4 seconds and then abruptly stopped. No audio equipment had been active during the moment of opening. When recording devices were checked afterward, 2 of them had been irreparably corrupted. Inside the sarcophagus was a single female skeleton, curled into a fetal position, hands over ears. Her jaw was open unnaturally wide, and her skull showed signs of microfractures along the auditory canal and cranial sutures, suggesting prolonged exposure to low-frequency vibrations. Carbon dating placed her death at approximately 1800 BCE, but further tests revealed unnaturally preserved soft tissue remnants around the inner ear, as if that region had been altered chemically or thermally prior to death. The local team physician recorded an unexplained drop in ambient temperature around the sarcophagus for nearly 2 hours after opening, a fall of over 12 degrees despite the tent being sealed, and the outside climate exceeding 95 degrees Fahrenheit. The most severe reaction came from Dr. Alain Mercier, an acoustics expert assisting with structural scans. After the scream, he reportedly suffered a seizure and began speaking in an archaic form of Akkadian that only one other team member could partially translate. His utterances referenced the mother who cannot die and the breath that binds silence. He was airlifted to a hospital in Damascus, but vanished from official records within weeks. His family later claimed he was transferred to a military facility and barred from communication. Shortly after the incident, the Syrian Directorate General of Antiquities and Museums declared the site off-limits due to geotechnical instability, and all materials were confiscated. Reports of the scream spread online through leaked emails and secondhand accounts, sparking speculation that the tomb had been engineered to release an acoustic event upon opening. Some theorized that the scream was the result of ancient sound-based containment, a deliberate frequency trap encoded into the structure and released by breaking the seal. Later studies into acoustic weapons, developed during the Cold War, would describe sonic effects capable of causing nausea, disorientation, and psychological trauma. But none matched the duration or the clarity of what was reportedly heard inside that tent. If the scream truly originated from a voice, then something about that moment, that sound, had been preserved across 38 centuries without mechanical storage, waiting only for the tomb to be opened. And if it did not come from the remains within, then the sound had no physical source at all. What kind of civilization engineers a voice to survive death? And why did it scream the moment we listen? Top 9. The Cursed Vault in Petra. In April 1992, a Jordanian-Italian archaeological collaboration launched a structural integrity survey of the lesser-explored southern canyons of Petra, the ancient rock-cut city carved into rose-colored sandstone cliffs. While Petra is renowned for its majestic facades like the treasury and the monastery, deeper within its labyrinth of canyons lies a sealed chamber known in local oral history as Bab al-Kufiyah, the hidden gate. Unlike most Petra tombs, which are accessible and well documented, this chamber has never been entered, not because of difficulty, but because every documented attempt to open it has ended in inexplicable disaster. The chamber's entrance is recessed behind a naturally eroded overhang and features a carved stone door unlike any other in Petra. The surface bears no inscriptions or decorative motifs, only a perfect concave indentation measuring exactly 18 inches across, filled with hardened mineral deposits. In 1909, a British explorer named Charles F. Forster reportedly attempted to drill through the rock and died days later from a cerebral hemorrhage. In 1958, a Jordanian team used industrial chisels to breach the perimeter. 2 workers were injured in a sudden equipment malfunction, and the project was abandoned. The most serious attempt came in 1992, when the joint expedition arrived with advanced imaging tools and vibration scanners, hoping to understand what lay behind the chamber wall. Within minutes of initiating their survey, equipment failures began. Ground-penetrating radar units shut down with corrupted readouts. Power supplies surged uncontrollably, destroying the primary voltage regulator. The team's only functioning camera captured 3 frames before its internal lens cracked without external pressure. Worse, one of the engineers operating the vibration sensors collapsed after reporting a metallic ringing in his head. He later described a vision of 1,000 small mouths whispering from the stone. The incident was logged, but the project was immediately suspended. Subsequent investigations by Jordan's Department of Antiquities yielded no rational explanations. Instruments brought to test the rock's density detected a hollow cavity behind the wall, roughly 12 feet wide by 10 feet tall, but no method of entry could be attempted without triggering mechanical failure. In a debriefing document later leaked to an Italian academic journal, the chamber was referred to as electromagnetically volatile and unresponsive to traditional architectural principles. To this day, the vault remains sealed. The stone face shows no erosion or instability, despite centuries of exposure to wind and sand. No local guides will approach it, and the path leading to it is rarely marked on tour maps. Researchers who've tried to digitally render the chamber from indirect scans report artifacts, misalignments, false shadows, and warped dimensions, as though the chamber resists even virtual access. In 2017, an independent archaeological drone survey attempted to capture high-resolution images of the area. The drone lost control and crashed into the ravine below. Its onboard data was later recovered, but all footage of the vault was blank. If the vault in Petra is a tomb, then it has been sealed not just by stone, but by a system that defies intrusion, technological, psychological, or otherwise. No records explain who lies within or why such extreme preservation measures were taken. And if it is not a tomb, then what rests behind that sandstone wall, untouched for over 2,000 years? And why does it still resist being known? Top 10. The Burial Pit of Saqqara. In November 2006, a team of Egyptian antiquities officials began routine restoration work at the Saqqara necropolis, one of the oldest and most archaeologically dense burial complexes in the world. Located just south of Cairo, Saqqara is famous for the step pyramid of Djoser and its labyrinthine network of shafts, tombs, and sealed chambers. But beneath a forgotten storage crypt on the site's southern fringe, conservators stumbled upon a sealed stone slab that did not match any known architectural layout. Hidden beneath centuries of sand and debris, it led to a narrow staircase descending into pitch-black silence. What followed was never formally published, and those who participated in the excavation have since gone silent. According to internal memos leaked in 2010, a small team of 6 archaeologists and support staff entered the chamber beneath the slab on the evening of November 16th. Within, they found a deep burial pit carved directly into the bedrock, measuring nearly 20 feet in diameter and perfectly circular. In the center lay a raised platform of polished diorite, on which sat a large lidless sarcophagus made from a single block of black alabaster. No inscriptions, no artifacts, and no visible remains, just a hollow cavity filled with dense, stagnant air that triggered immediate dizziness among the team. The team's notes, later redacted in official reports, described a strange acoustic phenomenon. Voices spoken at normal volume echoed unnaturally long, with a delay of over 2 seconds and a tonal distortion as if slowed. Sound recorders brought in to document the chamber produced looping static with embedded tones that matched no environmental frequency. One researcher collapsed while attempting to map the pit's dimensions, later claiming he heard a second heartbeat, not his own, reverberating from beneath the sarcophagus. Perhaps most disturbing of all was the sudden behavior change in the team leader, Dr. Nadim al-Hakim, a highly respected Egyptologist. After entering the chamber for a solo photographic session, Dr. al-Hakim reportedly exited 27 minutes later, pale and silent, refusing to speak or explain what he had seen. That night, he left the excavation site without informing the staff. He was never seen publicly again. His resignation letter arrived a week later, typed but unsigned, stating only, "I've seen what I was not meant to see. We must not open what was sealed before language." Shortly thereafter, all work in the southern sector of Saqqara was halted. The entrance to the pit was resealed with poured concrete under the guise of structural preservation. The Egyptian Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities never issued a public statement, and subsequent requests for access were denied without explanation. Mentions of the site in annual excavation logs were quietly removed. In the years since, researchers attempting to triangulate the pit's location using satellite data and historical maps have noted strange inconsistencies. Maps misaligned by several feet, and satellite imagery from multiple providers show blurring artifacts over the site. Whispers among regional guides refer to it simply as al-Majbur al-Maskut, the silenced compulsion. If the burial pit beneath Saqqara holds no remains, no names, and no offerings, then what purpose did it serve? And what could cause seasoned scientists to abandon their careers in silence? Perhaps it was never a tomb for the dead. Perhaps it was a vault meant to contain something still alive, or something that listens. These 10 cursed tombs, scattered across continents, cultures, and centuries, reveal something deeply unsettling. They are not just isolated incidents of misfortune or superstition. They form a pattern of intrusion met with punishment, of exploration followed by silence, of knowledge buried not only beneath earth and stone, but beneath fear, illness, and memory itself. This is not coincidence. This is control. From the deserts of Egypt to the frozen tundra of Siberia, these burial sites share one common thread. Those who opened them suffered consequences that defy medicine, physics, and logic. Sudden deaths, permanent amnesia, equipment failures, hallucinations, lost data, missing people. The reactions are never the same, and yet they all feel like variations of the same locked mechanism being disturbed, one that was never meant to be approached. If this were merely folklore, it would fade under scrutiny, but the details remain, archived in suppressed reports, redacted testimonies, corrupted recordings, and the vanishing careers of respected professionals who saw too much and said too little. Each case reveals hints of systemic suppression, governments that resealed tombs without full investigation, museums that confiscated artifacts with no public catalog, institutes that reassigned teams, deleted names, scrubbed records. These aren't mistakes. They are policies, patterns of erasure, patterns of silence, not to protect the dead, but to protect the living from what the dead may still carry, from what their resting places may still emit, from what their creators may have encoded into stone, frequency, and space. And then comes the unspoken question, what have we lost because of this fear? What knowledge, what warnings, what technological or psychological advancements were sealed away and buried again under concrete and misdirection? Did the ancient engineers of these tombs master forms of perception, sound manipulation, or electromagnetic interference we have yet to understand? Were these chambers weapons, memories, beacons, or prisons? We often speak of archaeology as uncovering truth, but what if these tombs are not meant to be understood? What if understanding them is the very trigger that activates their defense? When memory is erased, when sound burns the ears, when sight distorts, when data disappears, we are not looking at metaphors. We are looking at systems of containment, systems that still work. And the real tragedy? It's not just the bodies that were buried. It's the warnings that came with them. There is a reason we are told not to disturb the dead, not out of reverence, not out of myth, but because something in those tombs is still listening. If these accounts of ancient defenses and lost history have changed how you view the ground beneath your feet, please subscribe and like the channel. We are excavating the truths that they have tried to keep hidden. Help us plant the seeds of the future. The next vault of secrets will be open soon.